And what's up, everybody? Welcome into another Rath Learning Curve. We have Week 1 college fantasy football on FanDuel, the Saturday early slate. We're going to talk about this evening, put up some strategy for you. Uh, but before we get into that video, just want to make you guys aware about rotocurve.com and all the content that we have over there. You know, this video does go out to YouTube. We do get a lot of people viewing on YouTube, but most importantly, what we need you to do is head over to rotocurve.com, follow us on Twitter at rotocurve, follow me at FantasyWrath, and sign up for a membership and be active in our forums and make posts and take advantage of all the content that we have, because we have a lot of videos, we have a lot of written articles from Benny and Josh and myself, and also there's a lot of benefits to becoming a member of RotoCurve. We have special free rolls, special promotions, and it's definitely worth getting in. And our chat room is pretty lively. There's a lot of good talk in that chat room. So head on over to rotocurve.com after you watch this video, set up your account, and start digging into all the free content that we have for all the daily fantasy sports in the industry. So let's get into it. FanDuel's early slate for Saturday college fantasy football. We're going to walk you through the Vegas numbers and project out those scores. We're going to look at the matchups on offense and defense, on rushing and passing. We're then going to kind of get an idea of the teams and the players that we're looking at by position. And then we're going to show you how to build some lineups with certain players, certain strategies as well. So we're going to hit you with all four of those with a screen share. And let's start you off right here. All right, here we go, guys. FanDuel, basically what we do, we come over, we export the salaries. So we get all the salaries for the early slate. And then I go through all of them, and I highlight in green the guys that I like after we go through the Vegas matchups. So let's go into the Vegas matchups. What we have here is we go through who's the favorite, who's the underdog, and what the projected scores are going to be based on the over-unders and based on the lines. Throw the good guys, the high scores in green, low totals in red, or high-risk lines in red that we think games are going to be blowouts and they might pull the starters. Again, we're looking at Penn State, Temple, and Stanford Northwestern as two of the lowest totals on the board, so we want to be aware of those. We have some pretty good scores, over-unders. Tennessee, Bowling Green, 69. Nebraska, BYU, 60. Tulsa, FAU, 67 with a 5. So those are the ones that we always look on both sides. Old Dominion, Eastern Michigan at a 62 with a 5 as well. So we go over here, sort them like we did. And we got Tennessee on the top at 45, Georgia 44.5, Arkansas, UCLA, Tulsa, Auburn. So these are the teams that we project, that Vegas projects having the highest score. And come down here. Obviously, we're not taking anybody from UTEP, Louisiana, Monroe, Virginia, Northwestern, Temple. We got Louisville in there. Some of the ones in the 20s are possibilities. Just depends on the matchups, and we'll go through those. But we start off with the Vegas information. We get a feel for it. We plug that in over here. Again, we come up with our matchups. Now, these matchup rankings are what Phil Steele is projecting for these teams for the year. That's the best data and the strongest data that I'm willing to take. There's some people that do rely on last year's data, and I'm not, I'm not opposed to that. But Phil Steele does take into consideration players lost and players that are returning. So I think that his data is a little bit more sharp. So what we're looking at here is I take the favorites. I take Phil Steele's projected rushing offensive ranking and passing offensive ranking, and then the defense, and then we match it up with the underdog. And then what we look at, and you guys followed me on DFSN last year in my articles where we had a lot of success in college fantasy football using this system. What I look at are the teams that have the best differentials on run and pass, and then also tie that in with the Vegas projected score. So let's go with Georgia. Georgia has a rushing offense of 10, has a rank of 10, and they're going against a team that has a rushing defense rank of 70. So that gives Georgia a plus 60. Now, the interesting thing is Georgia actually has a negative 22 on the passing side. So that tells me that Georgia's going to run the ball quite a bit in this game. And again, it's Louisiana Monroe. There's really no reason for them to, really not run the ball behind that offensive line with Nick Chubb and some of the other guys that they got. So what I do is I put the good run teams in green, those we want to focus on running backs or running quarterbacks in these spots. And then we come over here, we look at on the passing side. So we're looking at quarterbacks and receivers in this spot, and then obviously matching it up with the projected score. So if we get greens, Tulsa and Tennessee are greens all the way across the board. Now, the issue with Tennessee is there's a pretty big spread in that game, but I think it's within reason where they're not going to pull people. So Tennessee and Tulsa really look to be the teams tomorrow that we want to focus on for the Saturday early slate. So there's a lot of players that you can definitely look at on both those teams. So let's get into that, and let's start looking back at what we did here. So I'm going to sort this by team. So what I did basically on the running back side, we got Alex Collins from Arkansas. The reason why you got to like Alex Collins is the other running back for Arkansas is out for the year, so he is now the number one. They were going to split time. So Alex Collins is definitely a guy in play. Hunter Henry is one of the best college tight ends out there, and so you got to like him. Tight end is very limited on the Saturday slate for early. And then a punt play is a guy from BYU, Taron Hoke. We'll talk about him a little bit further. Florida Atlantic, FAU, we got Jay Warren. Not a great play, but at 7,000, he's got a pretty good matchup. Again, we like that FAU Tulsa game. Lots of points projected to be scored and not a lot of defense in that game as well. We'll come over. We talked about Nick Chubb from Georgia. Chubb is a little bit risky as they may pull him early in the game if they get up big, and they may go to some other secondary running backs. So I can definitely see that. This is a guy you definitely want to keep an eye on here. Jordan Westerkamp, wide receiver from Nebraska. Nebraska's number one wide receiver is out. He's hurt. And so now Westerkamp is a guy that kind of inherits the role, and he's only at 5,000. We have a high total game. And Nebraska's offense is changing. You remember one of my videos early on that I did, we talked about coaching changes, is Nebraska is going to go from kind of a run-heavy team to now more of a passing offense. So that's where Westerkamp comes into play. Like this Old Dominion matchup, high total, low spread. Now, Schuler Bentley is very expensive. He's 9,400. He's very, very expensive. I really only like him for a tournament, and I think you almost have to just bank on Old Dominion going off and probably pair Zach Pascal and David Washington with Bentley. You have to almost just kind of stack the game and go with these three guys in the game. I think that's the only way you can really play it. You can take the wide receivers outside of Bentley, but I think if you're going to play Bentley, you almost really got to go with some of these wide receivers. So we'll talk about that. Like this spot here, Christian McCaffrey, 7K, Stanford running back, going against Northwestern. Stanford should probably try to establish the run in this game. They're going to win the ball this year, running and defense. Austin Hooper is one of the best tight ends in college fantasy football, and Stanford does use the tight end quite a bit. So that's a guy that I definitely like this week as well. Now, the Tennessee game, absolutely want to load up on a bunch of guys in Tennessee. Josh Dobbs, a quarterback, was a beast last year, so I'd like him at 10K. Jalen Hurd is at 8,300. Again, pretty much like everybody in this Tennessee game. Now, the thing with Tennessee is one of their top wide receivers is suspended, which is Howard. So you got Marquez North that gets a value bump, and then also Von Pearson gets a value bump as well. So I think you got to look at Marquez North and Von Pearson from Tennessee in this game. And again, we love the Tulsa offense with the Baylor OC going over to Tulsa. As I'm recording this video, SMU is playing Baylor, and SMU was one of those teams that I talked about in my earlier videos this year, and they're absolutely going nuts against Baylor. Again, Tulsa was the other team that I talked about in terms of coaching change. You got Philip Montgomery, I believe his name is, coming over from Baylor as the offensive coordinator, now the coach of Tulsa. And I think that's going to be big things here for Dane Evans, running back Zach Langer. Kevin Lucas is already one of the best wide receivers in college football. He's at 9,800. You got to pair him with Evans if you're going to play him in a tournament. And then also you got Kieris Garrett, who's a number 2 wide receiver for Tulsa. And then to round it out, we're going to look at Paul Perkins. He's very high priced at 9,400. UCLA starting running back. UCLA has a huge edge in the rushing game against Virginia. And they're also starting a freshman quarterback. So I'm expecting that there's going to be a heavy dose of Paul Perkins to help protect the freshman quarterback. So what I do now is I come back over and we start doing our lineups. And we talked about this the other day with some of these guys. And let's talk about, pairing quarterbacks with the with the wide receivers and how that's going to play out on FanDuel. And we'll do pairings. We got ODU, we got Tulsa, and then we got kind of the cash lineup in here as well. So let's talk about this. If you want to go Dobbs, let's say Dobbs is number one quarterback on your board going against Bowling Green. You have to drop down at the running back position in order to get value. So what we want to do is we look at Tulsa and we look at McCaffrey from Stanford. I love McCaffrey at 7K. Langer, I'm not huge on, but again, we got to go cheap. What I'm trying to do here with Dobbs is I'm trying to load up on the Tennessee offense. I'm going Marquez North and Von Pearson. I'm throwing in Westerkamp because at 5K, it's really hard to get away from him. And then you throw in Hunter Henry at 2,800. Now, I do leave 1,200 on the board. The thing about that is I really couldn't have any other plays that could fit in. The salaries were just too high. So I wanted to build a lineup and show you guys what a lineup would look like stacking Tennessee with North and with Pearson and with Dobbs. So that's what it would look like. Yes, leaving 1,200 on the table. If you can find other plays that you feel more comfortable with, then absolutely do it. But I think that for this case, that was just the direction that I wanted to head in. You can potentially squeeze another guy in. Like if you go with, I think Hooper is at 3,700. We can jump back over here and we can look at Hooper is at 3,700. So you squeeze Hooper in here, you're going to have better value. But again, I like Henry in this spot, but you can go with Hooper as well and get a little bit more bang for your buck. The only reason I didn't necessarily want to go Hooper in this lineup is because I already had McCaffrey. And with that being such a low-scoring game, I didn't really want to double up on the Stanford running back situation. So let's drop down and let's look at if you stack with Old Dominion. You go with Shuler Bentley, and then you go with Zach Pascal. Now, I did talk about David Washington and trying to get him in. In this case, though, I wasn't really able to fit him in and get him in the salary. But again, I'm going with Langer and McCaffrey. Those are kind of the cheap running backs. I really don't like anyone else, that's drop down cheap. Really high on Westerkamp, and then also Pearson taking advantage of the game, and then that suspension with Howard, and then Henry's back in as my tight end. So that's what it would look like. You get a couple of changes there with Bentley and then with Pascal. So if you feel confident about ODU, lighten up Eastern Michigan, putting up some points, that's the direction you can go. Tulsa, we talked about that matchup. Again, if you go Evans-Lucas, which is a pretty expensive stack, then again, we go with Christian McCaffrey at running back, or then we also come back, we go Jay Warren at 7K. We feel that game is going to be up and down, back and forth with a lot of offense. So we go, we get the FAU back in there. Again, Pearson and Westerkamp, the value is so good that you just got to go there. And then the sleeper tight end is Taron Hoke at 2K. He's the punt play, leaving you at 44.6 out of the 45. Go back here. Always got to remember that FanDuel's CFB cap is 45. Now, this is more of a cash lineup because I diversify the teams. I don't stack here, and I switch up and I go Evans at quarterback because I think dollar for dollar, I think Evans is probably in the best situation. Perkins at running back. We still go with McCaffrey at running back. And then obviously, Westerkamp and Pearson are the two guys I'm really locked in on. And then we throw in David Washington, number 2 wide receiver for Old Dominion at 6K. Come back with Hunter Henry at 2,800. So that's kind of more of a cash game play where I'm loading up more at the running back spot, the guy I feel the most comfortable with, and going with a good quarterback, and then going cheap at that wide receiver position. So put you at 44. Again, you can bump up and take the Stanford tight end, but I don't recommend that you do that only because I don't want to double up in that game. That game could be very low scoring. It could be like a 21-10 type game. So not a lot of offense going around there. All right, guys, that's the FanDuel lineup construction. These are the matchups. Talks about, how we go back in the background and how we pick the players. These are the Vegas projecteds. And then these are the guys that we're looking at as far as, let's bump that up a little bit for you. and you can see it. So what we do, we come up with, a lot of guys roll out, 50, 60 players as far as recommended picks. I'm going with 20 here. I'm very selective with the players that I give out. We don't want to give out 40, 50, 60 guys. It really doesn't do anybody any good. So we're only going with 20. Hopefully you guys can build some lineups off of the group that we talked about and some of those plays. So again, focus on Tennessee, Tulsa, Old Dominion. Those are some of the teams that you want to focus on tomorrow. Great matchups, great projected scores. And that's going to be it for that. So that's the wrap up for FanDuel Week 1, Saturday College Fantasy Football, the early slate. Hit us back here again. We're going to have a DraftKings video coming up later on today. And again, remember to go to rotocurve.com, sign up, become a member, and take advantage of all the free content that we have for all the daily fantasy sports sites. Hope to see you on RotoCurve. Thanks again, guys.